You know, when I've heard so many people talk about the spiritual awakening process and the consciousness expansion process, and how wonderful it is, how amazing it is, how exuberant it is, how their own experience, of course, this is their experience. I'm not saying that they're wrong. I'm just saying that was their experience, and how they feel about the bewilderment they feel when they've had these experiences due to their spiritual awakening process. And now I look at my own spiritual awakening process. And my spiritual awakening process was passing through the eye of the needle. And the eye of the needle that I passed through was abuse. See, my incarnation, my choice to come into this body, into this family, came with a pretty hefty price in this 3D world, in this 3D reality. I chose to, as a soul, as a wairua, as a spirit, to come into a family that puts dysfunctional. Dysfunctional doesn't come close, actually. Dysfunctional doesn't come close. I chose to incarnate into a family where the violence that I experienced in my childhood, I would not wish upon anyone. And I don't blame anyone for the violence that I experienced. My father and my mother did their best with what they had in regards to their level of consciousness and their own conditioning, their own patterns, their own beliefs, their own behaviors, what they've experienced as well, where they come from. But their lack of awareness, in regards to the spiritual path, the lack of awareness in regards to self-inquiry is evident, and was very evident to me as I passed through the eye of the needle from my spiritual awakening process. And your subconscious mind, as I've said before, and this is quite evident for people who do this, who have this spiritual awakening process, is that your subconscious mind, if you have the analogy of an iceberg, the waterline, you have 5% of the iceberg above the waterline, and the rest of the subconscious is beneath the waterline. So for me, having the experience of a child where all these software programs, you can call them, and I call them software programs, are programmed into your conscious, your subconscious. Everything you see, touch, taste, experience, feel, everything. Remember this too, at that age, between zip baby to 7, you're so impressionable. You take in everything. You're a Dyson vacuum cleaner. You hoover in all the information on every level, from subtle to physical. You suck everything in. So that all goes into the subconscious. All gets stored in the subconscious. So for me to pass through the eye of a needle, when I say that, due to the nature of my lack of awareness in my life, I portray myself being the victim throughout my childhood, my adolescence, and my early 20s. Because of the lack of self-awareness, I portray that out into the world, because it was programmed into my being and my subconscious to act and to think and to project out into the world that I am a victim. Even though I found moments of parity and moments of joy and wonder and exuberance, and also living my life in the 5 sense world in a very powerful and strong way and a fun way, I had no real sense of identity. I had no idea who I was. I was a mimic. I was in a place where I would meet people who I really liked. I enjoyed being around them and their energy. I would take on aspects of themselves, and I would mirror back to them who they were, in order to feel like I was fitting in. Right? And so my early 20s, when I had my spiritual awakening, proper spiritual awakening, I passed through the eye of the needle. Like, alcoholism was a big part of my early 20s before I broke through the other side, and passing through the eye of the needle for me was not a fun experience in any way. It was fucking horrific. So breaking down the way that I did, and I've broken down in my life and broken apart and fallen apart many times in my life. Every time it's taken me deeper into my spiritual work and my level of self-inquiry. So when I hear these people say how wonderful spiritual awakening process is, that's probably their experience. But in my experience, the spiritual awakening process is a fucking hefty one, and one that you don't take lightly, because it means you are literally having, on some level, the ego, the ego which is created through the conditioning process, breaking down. And then the self-inquiry to see that all the patterns, the beliefs, the experiences, the abuse in my situations, the traumas, all those aspects have all been funneled into the subconscious. And what I'm emanating out into the world around me is those unconscious behaviors. And part of my shadow work is to realize that a lot of the energy that I'm projecting out into the world in regards to what I'm experiencing around me, how people are relating to me, what I'm creating around me, where I am, what I'm experiencing, what I'm doing, what I'm manifesting in my life is all coming from my subconscious, because it's all stored in there, and that's where it's all percolating up, and therefore it's emanating out into the world around me. And I haven't had, I've had some fucking incredible experiences in my life, and met some amazing people, and that's due to the nature of me finding in my own self, the value in who I am, right? But I still have, and the subconscious is, remember this, it's 95%. I am doing shadow work, and I'm moving and through the layers to transmute and alchemize this and heal the trauma, the bonds, the wounds, the experiences, remove patterns that are limiting in my life, behaviors, thoughts, on and on and on I can go. Everything in the subconscious mind that no longer serves me in a way that allows me to align with my heart vortex, and allow the universe to flow through me, I am bringing it to the surface to heal it, to transmute it, to alchemize it, and to turn shit into solid gold, so to speak. But it's not a fucking easy process. It's painful. Often it's incredibly fucking painful, and I feel often so vulnerable, and I have this massive lack of self-worth that comes from being belittled constantly as a child, being abused physically, sexually, mentally, spiritually, never being able to be seen. Making videos like this to me were like garlic to a fucking vampire. I would not want to make a video like this about telling the world about my experiences, because the last thing I wanted to have is more ridicule in my life about who I am. And say, who the fuck do you think you are? One of the things that I've heard from my father over and over again. Those programs those words cut so deeply, the wounds cut so deeply. I had to hide away in my life, even though I wanted to express myself in a way that would allow me to be who I really wanted to be in my life. I was made to be invisible. I chose to be invisible due to the nature of my environment, my circumstances I was living and growing up in. I chose to be pretty much invisible. I had to be invisible, because if I wasn't, I would be abused violently, physically, or violently, verbally by my father, who was not well, who was who he was. He was a violent alcoholic. He was frustrated, he was angry, and that was also his path, but his lack of self-inquiry, his lack of ability to have what I had, my spiritual awakening process. I was an alcoholic. And I had an experience with my first long-term girlfriend at least anyway, where I acted out my father's behavior. Exactly, cookie cut. The program began to run through me and my lack of self-awareness. And when I became self-aware of what I was doing, that's when I stopped drinking. Because I knew that I was becoming my father, because the program was running unconsciously in my being. And I wasn't in control. My awareness, in that moment, I caught myself doing what my father had done to me. I was doing it to the woman that I loved, the one individual in my life that I loved more than anyone else in the world. Because I couldn't love myself. I didn't feel worthy of love due to the nature of my traumas, my childhood, my abuse, the words that were the horrifying and belittling words that I heard said to me and about me from various members of my father's family too, right? It wasn't just my father, my father's family and my mother's family as well. But this is, I don't blame these people for their experiences. They were only who they were because they didn't have the lack of self-inquiry or the lack of level of consciousness to be able to see that what they were saying were barbs going into a child's mind, heart, spirit, body, into the subconscious, and therefore at some point in their child's life would be emanating out to the world. If I was a parent now, knowing what I know now, my life experience and my ability to raise a child would be very different than it was 25, 30 years ago, due to the nature of my own self-inquiry, my own awareness. But spiritual awakening for me, even now, 30 years in my processes of doing this work, and do my best to do this work, I'm still fucking so vulnerable. And I hurt so much. I feel so much. I do for me, my meditations have gone from when I first learned how to meditate after drinking myself into a fucking nightmare, into an alcoholism. I stopped drinking overnight. I didn't go to rehab, didn't go to 12 steps, didn't go, I had a decision in 1993, was it 4? 93, 92. I had a choice in 1992 to go to rehab at Queen Margaret Hospital in Hammer Springs in the South Island, and I had this really strong urge to learn how to meditate. I've said this before in other videos. And I chose my mother. I gave her a call and said, "Mum, I'm becoming Dad. I need help." And this is me passing through the eye of the needle. This is what I say. This is the hardest part of my own. I went straight for it. And the eye of the needle for me, it was meditation. Because it brought me to a place of self-inquiry and going inward. And what I found inside of myself was a fucking nightmare. But at the same time, in the same moment, learning Metta Bhavana meditation, Metta Bhavana, which you learn at Vipassana on the last day, Metta meditation, that changed my entire profile of my existence. Because I began to see the illusory factor of the subconscious in regards to this lifetime and this frequency. It's a collection of experiences in the subconscious, like you would have a CPU, a central processing unit, or a hard drive. So it would be more of a hard drive in regards to everything you've experienced as being separate from myself, which I can draw upon in order to allow the ego, my ego in regards to this world's ego, this world's creation, through this frequency of all my experiences, to be able to relate to people. I saw that as what it was, a container over here, but my true self was the sliver of consciousness that was pure love. And through Metta Bhavana meditation, I became free of the shackles of my subconscious in a way that allowed me to have the ability to have self-inquiry into the container over here, where I have all these experiences and how I use them to be able to experience my life and how they manifest in my life. But that still was an incredibly painful experience to come to terms with who I had been and what I experienced. And yet after that, after I learned how to meditate, I still acted like a complete fucking world-class asshole in various ways of my life. And I knew, through my lack of self-inquiry, eventually coming back to that place of self-inquiry, that I was pulling out of my subconscious all the patterns, all the energies, all the conditioning, in order to respond to triggers in my life from people and experiences that would make me feel safe, because I was so used to having these experiences. And to say for anybody who says to me, the exuberance of spiritual awakening, it's part of it. But for me, spiritual awakening is not like that at all. It's a fucking hard road. and looking in the mirror at oneself and what one's become and what you really and truly are, which is love, held in the energies of the universe. God loves all of his children, all of its children. God loves every single sliver. We are all love. It's the cosmic glue that binds us. But when we're in these bodies, we have these things called egos. We have these things called the past. We have these things called subconscious minds, which are basically this framework of experiences. All your experiences, which you draw upon in order to be able to respond or react to situations we're triggered by. Choose to. If we have deep self-inquiry, we can pull from that container or come from the place of love and connection, right? And see each other as each other. But for me today, my meditations changed from Metta Bhavana to Tonglen, which is the Tibetan form of compassion, loving compassion meditation, to a form of meditation where I just come into my heart space and sit in my heart space and see what percolates up into my heart space, and then do my best to transmute it, to be aware of it, and to sit with it. And today, when I sat in my heart space, I felt so fucking vulnerable. I felt so, not afraid, but I felt incredibly vulnerable, and I felt the sense of self-worth that was percolating up through me, that made me feel like on some level attaining that which I already am. And this is the paradox, the oxymoron. Attaining that which I already am felt impossible in some way. I felt like I wasn't quite there where I wanted to be. But it's a perception, it's a point of attention, right? It's just a simple point of attention. I get that, I comprehend that, intellectualize it, but existing in that moment and knowing it is different. And I'm all for the Dr. David Hawkins' work, where you feel into what you feel. You don't suppress, you don't ignore, you feel what comes up, you truly feel it. And so I've done that for many, many years, completely feeling what I feel in that moment. When I was in my heart space today, I felt like my awakening process, my spiritual awakening process, my work, I felt so fucking overwhelmed, and the pain that I felt rising up through me, the vulnerability I felt rising up through me wasn't crippling, but it brought me to tears. This sense of despondency, this sense of despair, this sense of longing to be somewhere other than where I was, which is escaping, right? It's a form of escapism on some level. It's not spiritual bypassing, it's escapism. Escaping the moment because it was too painful. Nah, I turned back into that pain and I felt it deeply, and it fucking, I was broken by it. So for me to be able to tell you about my experience in regards to spiritual awakening, it's simply my experience, no one else's. I pass through the eye of the needle, and I do it often due to the nature of the brutality of my childhood. And I chose as a spirit, as a wairua, to come in as a soul to have this experience in this body with this family that I have. And I struggle. I don't know these people. I'm in my mother's house right now, and I don't feel I feel a biological connection to her because this avatar was created by her and my father. But I look at her often and think, who the fuck, what the fuck? How do I relate to you? Apart from the fact that we are one consciousness experiencing it subjectively. Who are we? My members of my family, and when I see them in regards to my biological family, I look at them and think, what? I don't get it. We grew up under the same roof, yeah. Had the same father, the same mother. We had this human experience, but, and that's not to belittle my connection to my family. I love my family as best I possibly can, and in the sense for me, the idea of love is to simply let people be who they choose to be, with the exception of setting boundaries of some people who cross your boundaries in order to fashion or to in a way to cross your boundaries in order to make their will your will. When that happens, no, No. There's no authority in my life apart from my Creator. That's my authority. There's no one else. My authority is my Creator. There's no one else. No one's ever going to tell me how to live my life or cross my boundaries to impose their will upon me. No one. Never again. Only my Creator can do that for me. No one else. That's because I love who I am, and I'm doing my best to love who I am through this process of awakening. Remember that. And by going into my heart vortex and meditating in my heart and feeling that fucking often exuberance and connection and the sense of wider connection to all that is, ever has been, and ever will be. But then that aspect of like going, my subconscious bubbles up, percolates up, it can chop me at my fucking knees, and I can feel the sense of despair and despondency and pain, which is a human experience, not soul experience. But I'm living in a body. So for me, my spiritual awakening process is my spiritual awakening experience is almost every time, and this is just my experience. I'm not doing this because of nature. I want people to feel sorry for me. It's not like that at all. This is just my experience. I pass through the eye of the needle often. And doing my shadow work is like the most important work I could possibly do to clear my decks. Because when I leave this place, I don't want to come back here. I belong somewhere else. I want to go home. But I'm clearing the decks the best I possibly can and righting the wrongs that I have. And some of them I can't right. I can't right my wrongs. I can't go back in time and change things. There's physicists and people that tell you that you can go back and change timelines. This ain't the Avengers Endgame, in my perception. Yeah, I can definitely put my energy into do my best to consolidate or to actually come to a place of apologizing on a level that's on a very individualized level of connection to someone who is no longer in my life, on that level of unified field consciousness, and apologize. But I cannot go back there's no back and forth because there's no linear time. I cannot change what has happened before, at least in the physical sense, but I can definitely go inward and forgive myself, and then by forgiving myself, knowing that on another level of existence, in my perception, my experiences that I have created in my life in the past that were not aligned with my heart, I can feel as though I have done my best to not to reconcile, but to rectify what I've done. And that's part of my work, my spiritual awakening process and my shadow work. And that can be, for me, very painful as well, because I see myself and know that even though I'm a better man now and know better through my self-inquiry, then I was who I was, and there's no excuses for that behavior, but I can see at least that I didn't have the level of awareness. And if I did have the level of awareness, I still acted the same way, that came from a place of feeling I acted from a way that made me feel safe, because I was so used to acting that way. And even though I knew better, I acted that way because it felt safe to act that way, and I acted in that particular to that particular action or word or deed. And even though it might not have been constructive to a more peaceful outcome, I know now through my passing through the eye of the needle, for me, that this process is ongoing, and I will do my best through this process to become the man, to become the spirit, the wairua in this world that I want to be, in order to uplift consciousness, elevate consciousness through my actions, words and deeds, rather than degrade it. You gotta bring it down, drop it down to a level where it becomes the world of beasts. Thanks for watching. I truly appreciate it. Mate wa. I'll see you again soon.